Welcome to the Leah Effect. I am your host, Charnelle, and if this is your first time here, welcome. And if you're returning for another episode, welcome back, okay? We are in full effect and on theme this season, which is titled The Season of the Slept On, where we are taking a closer look at the people in scripture who didn't always get top billing, but were still chosen, still used, and still impactful. And today's episode, oh yeah, he is most definitely in that category. He is a man of few words. Literally, there is not much to say about him. We're talking about Shamgar. And you might have heard that name once, maybe twice, or quite frankly, not at all. And honestly, that's not even your fault. But I have good news. By the end of the episode, you will know who he is. And maybe even know a bonus character. We'll see. But allow me to set the scene. Now, we are back in the book of Judges again. 2 weeks in a row, Charnelle? Yes, it's good for us. So let's do a brief overview of the book of Judges before we get to our guy Shamgar. The book of Judges speaks about, you guessed it, the judges of Israel before they had kings, and it's over the course of about 350 years. Now, again, these judges were not in black robes and white wigs and pounding gavels. Not so. They were tactical military leaders, tasked with leading the people of Israel out of captivity and into freedom. And this happened almost every other generation. Like, it really gets repetitive in terms of the cycle, but each judge is different. Their methods of warfare differ, their enemies are described, their comrades and their helpers are listed, and even their failures, along with their triumphs, are named. So, along with being military leaders, or essentially commanders-in-chief, they also upheld the morality of the people, ensuring that the decisions of the Israelites were aligned with God's commands. But what's interesting about the book of Judges, while it talks about the judges that range in age, gender, and skill, the overall motif of the book is the moral decline of the people of Israel. It gets very graphic, extremely gruesome in the final chapters of the book, which eventually leads to the 12 tribes of Israel enacting a civil war. Like, it gets nasty, but we can talk about that later down the line. Oh, and how can I forget? Okay, so the book of Judges features 12 judges, okay? Israel had 12. Some are more popular than others, so I will let my Sunday school scholars help me list them here. We have Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, because her name is Deborah because there's an O, okay? Gideon, Abimelech, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Isban, Elon, Abdon, and last but not least, we have Samson. Now, what brings us to Shamgar in the season of the slept on? Because most of these judges are not very familiar with us, okay? Sunday school, you talk about Gideon, you talk about Samson. Deborah sometimes gets her shine on Mother's Day or Women's Day, but Shamgar? We find him in the book of Judges, and he's essentially a footnote at the end of someone else's story. The previous judge, Ehud, gets a whole entire chapter, a full breakdown about how he discreetly takes out the king in his own palace and leaves him there, and the guards think that the king is just, using the bathroom on himself. Now, while this may sound a little wild as I'm describing it, when you read it, not if you read it, when you read it, it's actually kind of funny. Anyway, so after the defeat of the king, Ehud and the Israelites take the land of Moab and live in peace and freedom for 80 years. And then, here comes Shamgar. His story is told in one verse. Judges 3:31. After him was Shamgar, son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. That's it. No build-up, no backstory, just what he did. And we get a little more context in Judges 5, verse 6. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael. Let me tell y'all something. I love me some Jael. The highways were abandoned. Travelers took to winding paths. From these two verses, what can we deduce about our man Shamgar? 1. He is not an Israelite or originally from the 12 tribes of Israel. His intro gives a brief explanation of his background, but not even that much, right? Anath, you would think, is either his mother or his father, being a son of Anath, right? Anath is not even a person. Anath is a Canaanite deity. Actually, she's the goddess of war. Shamgar is under the category of people who are warriors, fighters, on-siders. Like, it really wouldn't take much for him to really go toe-to-toe with anybody, which is good in this case. Secondly, he had an ox goad, a farming tool. And with that, he fought 600 Philistines, toe-to-toe, with an ox goad, and saved Israel. Now, let's talk about the Philistines for a little bit, and it's literally going to be a little bit. Yeah, those same Philistines with Goliath and them, David and the slingshot, those same ones. Now, the Philistines, outside of being an expansive, oppressive territory, were ironclad, bloodthirsty fighters. And during this time, they had such control that people were literally afraid to travel the main roads for trade and exchanging. Highways were abandoned, trade routes were officially declared as dangerous, so people had to take the long way, or the scenic route, just to avoid being attacked. And into that context, enter Shamgar with an ox goad. An ox goad, for those of you wondering, because low-key, everyone should be wondering what that is a wooden pole about 8 to 10 feet long with an iron spike at the end, and on the side of the spike, there's like a flat metal scraper. And this tool is used to correct and to direct the cattle or the oxen while plowing the fields. So it's not used to inflict pain on the animals, but just to cause a slight discomfort to get them going in the right direction. And the flat metal scraper is used to clear the dirt along the pathways that they're creating during the plowing. And I guess this tool doesn't only clear dirt, but apparently 600 Philistines. Yeah. So with all this information that we have about Shamgar, his story from top to bottom in one verse, possibly two, what is the Shamgar effect? Knowing what we know about judges and what they do and who they are, typically born within the 12 tribes of Israel, coming up under a tutelage or a teacher, Shamgar wouldn't traditionally be a qualified candidate for the position, but his story, albeit limited, is still worth being told. And valuable because it shows us that God can and will do great things even with the unexpected. The Shamgar effect is this. It's different. It's not bad. It's different. Great things can still come in different packaging. It doesn't always come in the person or the place or the presentation we expected or even prayed for, but the efficacy of God's work doesn't diminish because you don't like how it came. Sometimes it can come from left field. And because it doesn't come in the way you thought it should have come, you mishandle the answer. But what is missed if we do not steward the answer correctly? We can miss God. We miss God working for us. We miss God working with us. God fighting for us. God breathing on us. God advocating for us. One man fighting 600 trained soldiers with a pointy stick and winning is God in and of itself. God and only God. Shamgar can look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with the height of Victor Wembanyama, and I'd still think he'd tap out at about 35 of them. 600? Have y'all ever done 600 of anything consecutively with full effort, strength, and will? Oh, I just, and don't lie. Don't lie. The answer is okay if it's no. Because I'm going to say no. The answer for me is no. But we must examine these things to find God in the most minute of details, because he's in it. He actually authored it. Shamgar isn't the only instance of this. Think of Melchizedek. Say that name 3 times fast. That's another person that slept on. So now I got to give y'all some context to this. In Genesis 14, Abraham pulls up with a 318-man army to rescue his nephew Lot. Sis boom ba, they win the battle. And as Abraham returns home victorious from battle, we see this king come in. This king from Salem named Melchizedek. Now this man comes out of nowhere. No one knows who he is. And the only thing we know is that he comes from Salem and that he is the priest of God Most High, El Elyon, the same God that Abram is serving. And that is not a commonality during this time. So it turns out that Salem is pre-Jerusalem, but it's the city that will become Jerusalem later in the Bible. And he brings Abram bread and wine and blesses him and sups with him. And Abraham gives Melchizedek 1/10 of all he owns. And then we don't see King Kizzy again. In this same story, Melchizedek comes, eats, gets 1/10 of what Abraham is offering him, and dips. And we don't hear from Melchizedek again. But what do we know after this? Who else was a high priest and king of the Most High God coming from the city of Jerusalem and voluntarily offering bread and wine to bless the people? This is a God-breathed moment. This isn't random. This isn't happenstance. This is a foreshadowing of Jesus. Generations before he actually comes to earth. This was God setting a precedent before the full picture arrived. And since we're speaking about answered prayers appearing in unexpected ways, let's talk about it. For years, for generations, the King is coming, the Messiah is coming, the Savior is coming. The answer is here to redeem us all. And in the Gospels, we find Jesus born to Mary and Joseph of Nazareth in the ghettos of Bethlehem. The child was born in a barn, laying in a manger filled with hay. Y'all know what a manger is? A feeding trough for animals. Later, when Jesus is selecting his disciples, hand selecting his disciples, Philip, his newest disciple, tells his homie Nathaniel, "We have found the one who Moses wrote about in the law. The one who the prophets spoke of, Jesus of Nazareth." And Nathaniel said, "Nazareth? Can any good thing come from Nazareth?" And Jesus says, "This is the Israelite where there is no deceit. And I need him on my team. He'll tell you the truth with no problem, with no issue." Little details that we just seem to bypass time and time again because we don't think it's significant. We don't think it's adding to the bigger picture that is our life. And sometimes we are so eager to eliminate the idea of God authoring the story in a way different than we've imagined. In certain seasons of our lives when we want chapters and chapters and chapters because the bigger picture was displayed right then and right there. When sometimes the season only warrants one verse. And we bypass it. But the great thing is the small verses do not change the fact that God was present in that time too. We rest so easily on our own understanding when our understanding is very, very flawed. And how do I know that? Look at any picture of you in middle school and tell me that you had a good fit on. Do not lie on this podcast. All right. Thank you. So yes, it happened differently than imagined, but it still worked out with the best for you in mind. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. So the question now becomes, what are we mishandling or overlooking? Like most of us overlooked Shamgar because its arrival wasn't ideal. Because Shamgar, a deliverer, raised up for Israel, didn't come from their tribes, didn't come from their soil, didn't come from their lineage. And yet, he still saved Israel. May this be your reminder that the small verses matter in your story too. God is still the author. God is still in the story. And in his hands, the overlooked can still have impact. The one-verse seasons still carry weight just as much as the detailed chapters upon chapters upon chapters. So may we not skim past our Shamgar seasons, the ones that seem small, condensed, easy to miss. May we open our eyes to see God in the unexpected, because that just might be where the answer is. Don't get so caught up in the packaging that you miss the gift and the giver of that gift. That is the Shamgar effect. So what did we learn today? We learned about Shamgar. We learned about King Kizzy. Let me stop. His name is King Melchizedek. Say that 3 times fast. We learned about what an ox goad was. Isn't that good? I'm so proud of us. That's so nice. Yes, but thank you all for joining me for another episode of The Leah Effect. Please be sure to follow us on Instagram @_The Leah Effect and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Leah Effect. Okay, and remember, there's always more to the story, and the effects are truly endless. Catch you next time, y'all.